The alien princess thought her human husband was weak until he drew his blade. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The royal palace of Viridian Prime gleamed under the light of 3 moons, its crystalline spires reaching toward the stars like frozen fountains of light. Within those walls, Princess Zara of the Viridian Empire paced in her private chamber, her iridescent scales shimmering with frustration as her tail lashed behind her. "I don't understand why my father insists on this political marriage," Zara muttered to her handmaiden, Kelris. "A human? They're so fragile." Kelris, her scales a subdued blue compared to the princess's vibrant teal, kept her gaze lowered. "The alliance with Earth is crucial, Your Highness. The Krogath Empire grows stronger each cycle. We need human technology and resources, but they're barely a spacefaring species. Just because they've colonized a few planets in their system doesn't make them worthy allies." Zara stopped before a window overlooking the capital city, where preparations for the royal wedding were already underway. "And this Blake Turner they're sending, what do we even know about him?" "He's a diplomat from their North American coalition. His profile indicates he's respected among his people for negotiating several interplanetary treaties." Zara snorted, a small jet of steam escaping her nostrils. "Negotiating. That's what humans do, isn't it? They talk while real warriors fight." The Viridians had evolved from apex predators on a harsh world. For thousands of years, they had built their empire through conquest and martial prowess. Every royal was trained from hatching in combat arts, and Zara herself had won her first ritual duel at the equivalent of human age 12. The thought of binding herself to a species that prided itself on diplomacy over combat felt like a personal insult. "The delegation arrives tomorrow, Your Highness. Perhaps the human will surprise you." Zara's golden eyes narrowed. "I doubt it." Blake Turner stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel approaching Viridian Prime, adjusting the collar of his formal attire. At 34, he had spent over a decade in diplomatic service, but this mission was unlike any other. He was not just representing Earth's interests, he was becoming part of the Viridian royal family. "Nervous?" asked Commander Sarah Morgan, his security chief. Blake offered a wry smile. "Wouldn't you be? I'm about to marry a princess from a warrior culture who can probably bench press me without breaking a sweat." Sarah chuckled. "Just remember your training. The Viridians respect strength, but they define it differently than we do." "I know." Blake had spent months studying Viridian culture. Strength of purpose, strength of character, not just physical prowess. "Still," Sarah said, checking her sidearm discreetly, "keep your guard up. Not everyone on Viridian Prime will welcome this alliance." Blake nodded, his hand unconsciously touching the small case secured in his inner pocket. Inside was a family heirloom, something his grandfather had insisted he take. "A diplomatic gift for the right moment," the old man had said with a knowing smile. Blake hadn't fully understood his grandfather's insistence, but he respected the old man's wisdom enough to comply. The ship's captain announced their final approach to the royal landing pad. Blake took a deep breath and straightened his posture. First impressions would be crucial. The royal reception hall buzzed with the presence of Viridian nobility, their scales glittering in various colors that denoted lineage and military achievements. Emperor Vexaler, his scales a deep royal purple with gold patterns signifying countless victories, sat upon a crystalline throne with his daughter standing rigidly at his side. Blake led the small Earth delegation into the hall, maintaining a dignified pace despite feeling small among the towering Viridians. Most stood at least 7 feet tall, with powerful builds that made even the most athletic humans look slight by comparison. Blake approached the throne and executed a perfect Viridian bow, not too deep, which would signal weakness, but with enough respect to acknowledge the Emperor's status. "Emperor Vexaler, I bring greetings from Earth. We are honored by your willingness to form this alliance through the sacred bond of marriage." The Emperor's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Blake Turner of Earth, your reputation precedes you. Your work in the Proxima Centauri negotiations demonstrated resourcefulness." He spoke the last word as if uncertain whether it was a compliment. Blake maintained eye contact, another crucial element of Viridian etiquette. "Thank you, Your Imperial Majesty. I hope to demonstrate that Earth's alliance brings more than just resourcefulness to the Viridian Empire. His gaze shifted to Princess Zara, and he struggled not to react to her barely concealed disdain. She was striking, her teal scales more luminescent than any he had seen in briefing materials, her golden eyes sharp with intelligence. A ceremonial blade hung at her hip, signifying her royal status and combat proficiency. Princess Zara, he bowed again. I am honored to meet my future bride. Zara's tail twitched, a sign of irritation Blake knew from his cultural briefings. The honor is mutual, I'm sure, she replied, her voice cool. Emperor Vexaler gestured to an attendant. The welcoming feast awaits. Tomorrow, you will participate in the ritual of compatibility before the wedding ceremony. Blake's diplomatic smile remained fixed, though inwardly he felt a jolt of concern. The briefings had mentioned a ritual, but provided few details, only that it was not physically dangerous to human participants. I look forward to it, Your Majesty. The feast was a test of endurance. Viridian cuisine featured meats so rare they were practically still moving, and drinks that burned Blake's throat like liquid fire. He consumed everything offered without complaint, earning grudging nods from some of the nobility. Cultural attachés had warned him. Refusing food would be seen as rejecting Viridian hospitality, a grave insult. Princess Zara observed her future husband throughout the meal. He was tall for a human, just over 6 feet, with a lean build that suggested regular exercise but not the warrior physique valued in Viridian culture. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and his green eyes missed nothing. She had noticed how he carefully watched the interactions between nobles, likely cataloging alliances and tensions for future reference. When the feast concluded, Zara approached Blake directly for the first time. You've survived your first Viridian meal. Many off-worlders find themselves in the medical bay after such an experience. Blake smiled. I've had practice adapting to different cuisines during my diplomatic postings. Though I admit, the flame spirit drink was invigorating. You'll need that vigor for tomorrow's ritual. Her golden eyes assessed him critically. I hope your diplomatic skills translate to other areas of performance. Blake recognized the challenge in her words. I believe in thorough preparation, Princess. But I'm also adaptable to unexpected situations. A flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, crossed Zara's features before she regained her aloof demeanor. We shall see. Rest well, human. Tomorrow will test you in ways your briefings likely didn't cover. As she walked away, Blake caught Commander Morgan's eye across the room. The security chief gave him a subtle nod. So far, everything was proceeding according to plan. But Blake couldn't shake the feeling that the Viridians, particularly his future bride, were expecting him to fail whatever test awaited tomorrow. The ritual of compatibility took place in an ancient arena at the heart of the royal complex. Thousands of Viridians filled the stands, eager to witness the human diplomat face their princess. Blake stood in a preparation chamber, dressed in a ceremonial outfit provided by the Viridians, lightweight armor that offered mobility but minimal protection. This doesn't look like a simple compatibility test, Sarah Morgan observed, eyeing the armor with concern. No, it doesn't, Blake agreed, testing his range of motion. But attacking me would defeat the purpose of the alliance. There must be more to this. A royal attendant entered and bowed. It is time, Earth diplomat. The princess awaits. Blake nodded to Sarah and followed the attendant into the arena. Sunlight reflected off the crystalline surfaces surrounding the sand-covered central area. At the opposite end stood Princess Zara, also in ceremonial armor, her scales gleaming like polished metal under the sun. Emperor Vexaler's voice boomed across the arena. Today we witness the ritual of compatibility between Princess Zara of Viridian Prime and Blake Turner of Earth. The ritual will demonstrate whether this union can strengthen our empire. Blake kept his expression neutral despite his growing unease. This had all the markings of combat preparation. The ritual consists of 3 challenges, the Emperor continued. First, the challenge of mind. Then, the challenge of spirit. Finally, the challenge of body. Begin. A platform rose from the arena floor between Blake and Zara, revealing what appeared to be a 3-dimensional puzzle made of interlocking crystalline pieces. Blake recognized it as a variation of strategic puzzles he'd seen throughout the palace, Viridians valued tactical thinking alongside physical prowess. The challenge of mind requires both participants to cooperate in solving the Unity puzzle, announced a ceremonial official. You must complete it without verbal communication. Blake approached the puzzle cautiously. Zara circled to the opposite side, her movements predatory and efficient. The puzzle glowed with internal light, responding as Zara manipulated the first piece. Blake studied the pattern, recognizing that it required complementary moves from both sides. For several tense minutes, they worked in silence. Blake anticipated Zara's moves and responded with counters that completed patterns rather than competing with her strategy. Initially, Zara seemed intent on dominating the puzzle, but gradually adjusted when she realized Blake's approach was creating more efficient solutions. When the final piece locked into place, the puzzle emitted a harmonious tone. The crowd murmured with approval. The challenge of mind is complete, the official announced. The participants have demonstrated compatible thought patterns. Zara's golden eyes met Blake's across the now glowing puzzle. She seemed surprised, and perhaps slightly impressed, by his performance. The puzzle descended into the floor, and a new platform rose, bearing 2 ornate chalices. The challenge of spirit requires participants to share in the essence of truth, the official explained. The ritual drink will lower mental barriers. Each must present one truth to the other. Blake approached cautiously. Truth serums were prohibited in diplomatic engagements, but this was a ritual predating such agreements. He lifted his chalice as Zara did the same. To compatible truths, he offered. Zara's mouth twitched, almost a smile. To revelations, she countered. They drank simultaneously. The liquid tasted of citrus and something metallic, spreading warmth through Blake's chest immediately. He felt his usual diplomatic reserve softening at the edges. Zara spoke first, her voice lower than before. I resented this arrangement. I believed humans too weak to strengthen our bloodline. I feared being bound to one who could not stand as my equal. Her scales rippled with color, an effect of the drink, or perhaps emotion breaking through her royal composure. The crowd leaned forward, eager to hear Blake's response. He felt the drink compelling honesty, but not controlling his choice of which truth to share. I understand your concern, Blake replied, feeling the warmth of the drink encouraging openness. Humans appear physically outmatched by Viridians. But I came here not just for politics or peace, but because I believe different kinds of strength, united, create something greater than either alone. A resonant tone sounded from somewhere within the arena. The challenge of spirit is complete, the official announced. The participants have exchanged compatible truths. Zara studied Blake with new intensity as the chalices were removed. He met her gaze steadily, feeling the effects of the drink receding, but leaving behind a strange connection between them. The final challenge approaches, human, Zara said quietly. Are you prepared to demonstrate your physical compatibility with a Viridian royal? Before Blake could answer, the arena floor shifted again. The sand retracted, revealing a polished stone circle. 2 weapon racks rose at opposite ends. The challenge of body, the Emperor announced, will test whether the Earth diplomat can stand with a Viridian warrior royal. Combat will continue until one yields or the judge declares a conclusion. The crowd roared with excitement. Blake kept his expression controlled, though his heart raced. This had not been in any briefing. Sarah Morgan was on her feet in the diplomatic section, speaking urgently into her communicator. Blake gave her a subtle hand signal, stand down. Protesting now would only demonstrate the weakness Zara already believed inherent in humans. Choose your weapons, the official instructed. Zara moved to her rack and selected a traditional Viridian glaive, a bladed staff that complemented her height and reach advantage. Blake approached his rack, noting that it contained weapons modified for human use. He bypassed the heavier options and selected a short sword and a small shield. Mobility would be his only advantage. They faced each other in the center of the circle. Up close, Blake could see the intricate patterns in Zara's scales, the predatory focus in her golden eyes. She towered over him, her powerful tail adding to her already impressive balance and leverage. Begin, the official commanded. Zara moved with stunning speed, her glaive whistling through the air in an arc that would have separated Blake's head from his shoulders had he not dropped into a roll. The crowd cheered at her aggression. Blake came up in a defensive stance, shield raised. Is running your strategy, diplomat? Zara taunted, circling him. Assessing, Blake replied calmly. Adaptation requires observation. Zara attacked again, a series of thrusts and sweeps that forced Blake to retreat around the circle. He blocked what he could with the shield, evaded the rest, but launched no counterattacks. The crowd began to murmur with disappointment. Fight back, Zara demanded, her scales flushing darker with frustration. Blake continued his defensive pattern, watching her movements carefully. Combat isn't always about striking first or hardest, princess. It is about victory. She punctuated her words with a powerful downward strike that Blake caught on his shield. The impact drove him to one knee, sending pain shooting through his arm. The crowd roared, sensing the end approaching. But instead of pressing her advantage, Zara hesitated, perhaps suspicious of Blake's continued calm despite his position. In that moment of hesitation, Blake acted. He pushed off from his kneeling position, sliding forward beneath her guard while deflecting her glaive with his shield. His sword flashed not toward her body, but toward her weapon, striking the shaft where her hands gripped it and applying precise pressure. The technique, leveraging biomechanics rather than brute strength, forced her grip to open reflexively. The glaive clattered to the stone. A shocked silence fell over the arena. Blake immediately stepped back, lowering his weapon, showing no interest in pressing his momentary advantage. Zara stared at him, then at her empty hands. What was that? She demanded. An earth martial technique, Blake explained, using an opponent's strength and reflexes against them. She retrieved her glaive, eyes narrowed. A trick, a different approach to combat, he countered. Strength expresses itself in many forms. The next clash was more cautious on both sides. Zara attacked with greater precision, wary now of Blake's unexpected skills. Blake maintained his defensive strategy, but occasionally executed swift counterstrikes that forced Zara to adjust her approach. Though he landed no telling blows, he demonstrated that he could not be easily overwhelmed. After several minutes of increasingly technical combat, the official struck a ceremonial gong. The challenge of body has demonstrated sufficient compatibility, the official announced. The human has shown capacity to stand with Viridian royalty. Zara looked displeased with the indecisive conclusion, but Blake saw calculation replacing her earlier disdain. He had not beaten her, could not have beaten her in a prolonged contest, but he had shown himself not to be the easy prey she had anticipated. As they exited the arena, Zara fell in a step beside him. You fight? Unexpectedly, she said, though you still would have lost eventually. Perhaps, Blake acknowledged. But marriages aren't battles to be won or lost, princess. They're alliances where both parties contribute their unique strengths. She considered this, her tail swishing thoughtfully behind her. You have given me something to consider, human. Tomorrow, we shall see if these unique strengths are enough to make you a worthy consort. The royal wedding ceremony combined ancient Viridian traditions with symbolic nods to Earth customs. Blake wore formal attire that merged human diplomatic dress with Viridian royal colors. Zara was resplendent in ceremonial armor that accentuated the natural beauty of her scales. As they completed the ritual binding, Blake noticed a subtle shift in the way some of the Viridian nobility regarded him. The complete dismissal had been replaced by cautious assessment. Not respect, not yet, but acknowledgement that he might be more than a political pawn. The emperor concluded the ceremony by presenting them with ceremonial quarters in the royal palace. May this union strengthen both our peoples, he intoned, though his eyes held a warning for Blake. The human had performed better than expected in the ritual, but the real test would be his contribution to the empire's strength. In their shared quarters that evening, an awkward silence stretched between the newly wedded couple. The room was a stunning blend of Viridian crystal architecture and earth-comfortable furnishings, a physical representation of their intended alliance. These chambers are quite spectacular, Blake observed, breaking the silence. Zara moved to a large viewport overlooking the capital city. They were designed by our finest architects to accommodate human comfort requirements while maintaining Viridian aesthetics. A thoughtful gesture toward cooperation. Blake joined her at the viewport, careful to maintain a respectful distance. The view reminds me somewhat of Vancouver at night, where I grew up on Earth. You miss your world? There was genuine curiosity in her question. Parts of it, though I've spent much of my adult life traveling between worlds. He glanced at her. Have you ever visited Earth? No. Her tail swished once. Father thought it unnecessary. Our intelligence services provided extensive data on human civilization. Data isn't experience, Blake said gently. Just as intelligence briefings about Viridians didn't prepare me for the reality of your people's strength and beauty. Zara's scales shimmered slightly. A Viridian blush, Blake realized. You speak well, diplomat. But compliments won't accelerate our adjustment period. She turned from the window. I've had private sleeping quarters prepared for you through that doorway. Viridian-human relations are too new to rush certain aspects of this alliance. Blake nodded, unsurprised and somewhat relieved. I appreciate your consideration, Princess. Trust is built over time, not forced by circumstance. Something like approval flickered in her golden eyes. Rest well, husband. Tomorrow begins your official integration into the royal court. Blake's integration proved to be a grueling series of presentations to various factions within the Viridian power structure. Military leaders questioned Earth's defensive capabilities. Economic advisors probed for weaknesses in human resource management. Cultural preservationists expressed concerns about human influences corrupting Viridian traditions. Through it all, Blake maintained diplomatic poise while demonstrating a depth of knowledge about Viridian society that occasionally surprised his interrogators. Zara observed from the sidelines, her expression inscrutable but her attention unwavering. During a rare break between meetings, Blake found himself alone with High General Draz, one of the Emperor's most trusted military advisors, and, according to intelligence briefings, a vocal opponent of the human alliance. You've memorized our customs well, Draz remarked, his scarred scales a deep crimson that spoke of countless battles. But memorization isn't understanding. True, Blake agreed. Understanding requires experience. I hope to gain that during my time here. Draz's reptilian eyes narrowed. Some believe this marriage makes a mockery of our royal bloodline. Princess Zara should have been matched with a warrior worthy of her strength. Every warrior needs allies, General, Blake replied evenly. Even the strongest fighter can be overwhelmed by superior numbers. The Krogath, Draz acknowledged. Yes, they grow bold at our borders. But what can humans offer against such an enemy? Your kind lacks natural armor, strength, combat instinct. We offer perspective, Blake said. Different approaches to conflict. Solutions beyond direct confrontation. Spoken like a species afraid to fight, Draz sneered. Spoken like a species that survived despite our physical limitations, Blake countered. Sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the sharpest claws, but the one that adapts most quickly to changing circumstances. Before Draz could respond, Princess Zara approached, ending the conversation. But Blake caught the calculating look in the general's eyes. He had neither won the man over nor completely alienated him. It was a start. 2 weeks into their marriage, alarms blared throughout the royal palace. Blake was in a diplomatic briefing when security personnel burst in. The palace is on lockdown, announced the security chief. All royal family members are being moved to secure locations. Blake was escorted to a fortified command center deep within the palace structure. There he found Zara studying tactical displays with her father and several military commanders. What's happening? Blake asked. Krogath infiltrators. Emperor Vexalar replied without looking up. They've breached the outer security perimeter. Blake joined them at the tactical display. The Krogath were a rival empire known for their brutal efficiency and hive-mind approach to warfare. Their soldiers, insectoid beings with natural armor even more formidable than Viridian scales, moved in perfect coordination across the palace grounds. How did they penetrate so far into the capital? Blake asked. General Draz growled. They used some kind of stealth technology we haven't encountered before. Our perimeter sensors didn't detect them until they were already inside the royal district. They're moving with purpose, Zara observed, pointing to the tactical display. Not random destruction. They're heading for specific targets. Blake studied the movement patterns. The communications hub, power distribution center, and he paused. They're converging on the path to this command center. The Emperor's scales darkened. This isn't a random attack. It's an assassination attempt. The wedding, Blake realized. They're targeting the Alliance itself. Zara nodded grimly. Killing both of us would severely damage relations between our worlds while removing key advocates for the Alliance. Security feeds showed Krogath forces overwhelming Viridian guards through sheer coordination and numbers. Though individually less powerful than Viridians, their synchronization made them devastating opponents. Standard defensive protocols are failing, General Draz reported. They anticipate our tactics. Blake had studied Krogath battle strategies during his diplomatic preparation. They operate with a unified consciousness during combat operations. Each soldier knows what the others know instantly. A strength and a weakness, Zara said, meeting Blake's gaze. She had reached the same conclusion. Exactly, Blake agreed. If we disrupt their synchronization, we need to reach the communications center, Zara said. From there, we could broadcast an interference pattern on their neural frequency. The Emperor looked skeptical. The communications center is already under attack. There's a maintenance access route, Zara insisted. A small team could reach it undetected. I'll go with you, Blake said immediately. General Draz laughed harshly. And what will you do, human? Talk the Krogath to death. Blake met the general's gaze steadily. I've studied their neural communication patterns as part of my diplomatic preparation. I can help calibrate the disruption signal. Zara looked to her father. We need to act quickly. The palace defenses won't hold much longer. After a moment's consideration, the Emperor nodded. Go. Take a security detail. A small team moves faster and draws less attention, Zara countered. Just Blake and myself. Blake saw the surprise ripple through the command center. The princess was placing not only her own life, but the success of the mission in the hands of her human husband. The Emperor studied his daughter, then Blake. Very well. But if you fail, we won't, Zara promised. The maintenance tunnels were cramped even for Blake. Zara had to move in a half-crouch, her tail dragging against the narrow walls. They navigated by the light of emergency strips embedded in the floor, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. You've been in these tunnels before, Blake observed, noting Zara's confident navigation. As a hatchling, I explored every part of the palace, she admitted. My father thought it built character. My tutors called it royal curiosity. I'd call it strategic preparation, Blake said with a smile. Zara glanced back at him. You're very calm for someone heading toward mortal danger. Panic rarely improves a situation. True, but neither does false confidence. She paused at a junction, checking a small device that displayed their position relative to the communications center. We'll need to ascend 2 levels here. As they climbed through access shafts, Blake asked, Why did you insist I come with you? General Draz wasn't wrong. I'm not a warrior by Viridian standards. Zara was silent for several moments, focusing on their climb. Finally, she said, You've proven resourceful. And you know things about the Krogath that even our military experts don't. That's very pragmatic of you, Blake remarked. I am a royal daughter, she replied. Pragmatism is required. They reached a sealed door that would lead them into the communications center. Beyond it, they could hear the sounds of conflict, the distinctive chittering of Krogath soldiers, and the energy discharge of Viridian weapons. The center is already under attack, Zara said, drawing her sidearm. Are you armed? Blake removed a small device from his pocket. Not in the conventional sense. She eyed the device skeptically. What is that? A prototype sonic disruptor. It was intended as a gift to your military research division, but current circumstances suggest an early demonstration might be appropriate. Zara's expression shifted to one of grudging approval. You continue to surprise me, husband. I hope that's a positive development in our relationship. A faint color shift rippled through her scales, that Viridian blush again. Let's focus on survival before we discuss relationship progress. Blake nodded, growing serious. The communications array is on the far side of the main control room. We'll need to reach it and input the disruption frequency. Once activated, it should disorient the Krogath long enough for your security forces to regroup. Zara input her royal access code, and the door slid open. They entered a scene of chaos. The communications center was a large circular room filled with advanced technology. Several Viridian technicians lay wounded or dead, while a handful of security personnel maintained a defensive position behind overturned equipment. 6 Krogath soldiers, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming like polished obsidian, were systematically destroying key systems. The central array is still intact, Blake observed quietly. But we need to reach the main console. Zara assessed the situation with a warrior's eye. I'll create a diversion. You get to the console. Before Blake could protest, she moved with predatory grace, firing her weapon at the ceiling above the Krogath. The energy blast dislodged part of the structure, sending debris raining down. The Krogath responded instantly, their hive mind coordination directing 3 of them toward this new threat, while the others continued their demolition work. Blake circled the perimeter of the room, using the distraction to approach the main console. From the corner of his eye, he saw Zara engage the Krogath with impressive skill, using both her weapon and her natural Viridian combat abilities. She was outnumbered, but her training and strength kept her ahead of their coordinated attacks, though he could see she wouldn't maintain that advantage for long. Reaching the console, Blake quickly interfaced his sonic disruptor with the communications system. His fingers flew across the controls, programming the specific frequency that would disrupt Krogath neural connections. A scream of pain drew his attention. Zara had taken a hit to her leg, her scales scorched by a Krogath energy weapon. She continued fighting, but her movements were hampered. The Krogath, sensing weakness, pressed their advantage. Blake worked faster, completing the final calibration. But as he prepared to activate the system, he realized 2 of the Krogath had spotted him and were rapidly approaching his position. No time. Blake activated the disruption signal and turned to face the approaching enemies. The sonic wave propagated through the room, broadcast simultaneously through all palace communication systems. The effect on the Krogath was immediate. They staggered, their coordinated movements becoming erratic as their hive connection fragmented. But they weren't completely incapacitated. One of them reached Blake, chitinous claws extended toward his throat. Blake dodged the first swipe, but found himself backed against the console. Zara shouted his name, trying to reach him despite her injury, but she was too far away. In that moment, Blake's hand went to his inner pocket, where he still carried his grandfather's diplomatic gift. He withdrew a slender case and pressed a concealed button. The case extended into a handle, from which a blade of remarkable craftsmanship emerged, a katana, passed down through his family for generations. The Krogath lunged. Blake moved with practiced precision, the sword arcing through the air with a whisper of steel. The blade, forged with techniques perfected over centuries on Earth, sliced through the Krogath's natural armor as if it were paper. The creature fell, green ichor seeping from a perfect diagonal cut across its thorax. The second Krogath hesitated, its hive-mind connection disrupted enough to introduce individual uncertainty. Blake didn't wait. He flowed into the next movement, a combination of strikes his grandfather had drilled into him since childhood. The second Krogath joined the first on the floor. Across the room, Zara had dispatched her opponents, though she leaned heavily on a damaged console for support, her injured leg barely supporting her weight. She stared at Blake, golden eyes wide with shock. You know blade combat, she said, astonishment evident in her voice. Blake moved to her side, helping support her weight. My grandfather was a master swordsman. He insisted I learn, said it built character. He smiled faintly. My diplomatic instructors called it an eccentric hobby. I would call it strategic preparation, Zara replied, echoing his earlier words. Palace security forces began pouring into the communications center, drawn by the cessation of Krogath coordination. Blake carefully sheathed the katana, transforming it back into its inconspicuous case. The disruption signal is working throughout the palace, a technician reported. The Krogath forces are in disarray. Our troops are regaining control. Zara's gaze remained fixed on Blake. You've been holding back during our training sessions. Not holding back, Blake corrected gently, waiting for the right moment to share that particular skill. Cultural exchange should be gradual, especially between new allies. A medical team arrived to treat Zara's injury. As they prepared to move her to the medical bay, she gripped Blake's arm with surprising strength. When I am treated, she said, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of royal command, You will show me that blade technique properly. As my husband and as a warrior. Blake bowed, a perfect Viridian gesture of respect between equals. It would be my honor, Princess. News of the thwarted assassination attempt, and particularly of the human diplomat's unexpected combat prowess, spread quickly through the royal court. By the time Blake visited Zara in the medical bay the following day, the story had grown to near-mythic proportions. I hear you single-handedly slew a dozen Krogath with your ancient earth weapon, Zara said dryly as he entered. Blake laughed. Court gossip is remarkably consistent across species, I see. Indeed. She gestured to a chair beside her recovery pod. Her injured leg was suspended in a regeneration field, the advanced Viridian medical technology accelerating the healing process. The Emperor is pleased with the outcome. The alliance has been proven beneficial more quickly than anticipated. Though not in the way we expected, Blake observed. No, Zara agreed. Combat effectiveness was not in your diplomatic portfolio. Blake sat beside her. My grandfather would be amused. He always insisted the sword skills would be useful in my diplomatic career. I humored him, but never really believed it. Tell me about this grandfather, Zara said, surprising Blake with her personal interest. He must be a formidable warrior. He was, Blake said softly. He passed away last year. His family has maintained samurai traditions for over 15 generations, though Earth hasn't seen actual samurai for centuries. Samurai, warrior nobles from a region of Earth called Japan. They lived by a strict code of honor, loyalty, and martial excellence. Zara's expression grew thoughtful. Your grandfather believed these ancient warrior values compatible with diplomatic service? He insisted they were essential to it. True strength, he said, included knowing when not to use force as much as knowing how to use it effectively when necessary. A wise perspective, Zara acknowledged. Perhaps not so different from Viridian combat philosophy. Blake smiled. I suspect he'd have enjoyed discussing martial philosophy with your combat instructors. And I suspect, Zara said, her tone softening, that there is more to my human husband than I initially believed. Cultural assumptions work both ways, Blake said gently. I've learned much about Viridian strength in my time here. Perhaps you might discover unexpected forms of human strength as well. Zara extended her hand toward him, a significant gesture for a Viridian royal to make toward anyone, even a spouse. I believe I already have. Blake took her hand, feeling the smooth scales against his skin. In that moment, something shifted between them, the beginning of genuine respect, perhaps even the foundation of something deeper. 6 months later, Blake and Zara stood side by side on a ceremonial platform as a new joint Viridian Human Defense Initiative was announced to the public. The alliance had grown stronger, bolstered by the shared victory against the Krogath infiltration and subsequent diplomatic breakthroughs. General Draz approached them after the ceremony, his manner considerably more respectful toward Blake than in their early encounters. The new defensive protocols have been implemented along our shared borders, he reported. Early results show a 20% increase in detection efficiency. Excellent, Zara said. And the cross-training program? Proceeding well. The human combat instructors have interesting perspectives to offer our warriors. The admission seemed to cost the general some effort, but his tone remained professional. And our instructors have been equally impressed by Earth's adaptive combat techniques, Zara added, her hand unconsciously moving to rest near Blake's sheathed katana, which he now wore openly as part of his formal attire, a symbol of his unique position in the Viridian court. As Draz departed, Zara turned to Blake. Your grandfather's sword techniques have become quite popular among the royal guard. Cultural exchange at its finest, Blake replied with a smile. And your insights on tactical applications of strength have revolutionized several Earth military doctrines. They walked together toward their private chambers, truly shared now, the separate sleeping arrangements long since abandoned as their relationship had evolved from political arrangement to genuine partnership. The Emperor has requested we lead a diplomatic mission to the Centauri colonies next month, Zara mentioned. He believes our particular combination of skills will be effective in resolving the mining rights dispute. I look forward to it, Blake said, though I hope it won't require sword demonstrations to make progress. Zara's scales rippled with amusement. Perhaps not, Though I've noticed diplomacy tends to advance more smoothly when others are aware of capabilities you choose not to display. The subtle strength of restraint, Blake agreed. A concept my people are still learning to appreciate. She stopped at the viewport that had marked their first awkward night as political spouses. The view of the capital was the same, but their perspective had changed dramatically. Though I find myself appreciating many human concepts these days. Blake took her hand, feeling the familiar texture of her scales against his skin, a sensation that had become not just comfortable but cherished. Cultural adaptation is a remarkable thing. Indeed, Zara agreed, leaning closer to him. Though some adaptations are more personal than cultural. In the privacy of their chambers, the Viridian princess and her human husband stood together, their silhouettes merging against the backdrop of stars visible through the viewport. Their worlds, so different in many ways, had found unexpected strength in their union, strength that neither would have discovered alone. The alliance that had begun as political necessity had transformed into something neither side had anticipated, a genuine bridge between worlds, built on mutual respect and the recognition that true strength took many forms. And for Zara and Blake, it had become something even more profound, a partnership of equals who had each discovered new dimensions of strength in themselves and in each other. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.